She moved into the treehouse on her uncle's orders, and the reason is incredible. Rachel Thompson never imagined her life would change so drastically in a single conversation. The 27-year-old woman held baby Ethan firmly in her lap while watching her 3 daughters play in the backyard of Uncle Robert's rural property in Gatlinburg, in the Smoky Mountains region of Tennessee. What seemed like just another weekend visit to the family farm turned into something completely different when the 52-year-old man appeared on the porch with a grave expression she had never seen before. "Rachel, I need you to listen carefully to what I'm about to say," said Robert, interrupting the children's play with a tone of urgency that made Emma, Olivia, and Noah stop running immediately. "You'll have to move into the treehouse, today." The declaration hit like a bolt from the blue. Rachel felt her heart race and adjusted the baby better in her lap, trying to process what she had just heard. The treehouse was a curious structure that had existed on the property for decades, integrated into the trunk of a giant, centuries-old tree at the back of the land. It had always been used as a storage shed or a place for the children to play during visits, but never as a residence. "Uncle, I don't understand. Why would we need to live there?" "The main house has plenty of room for all of us," questioned Rachel, watching the tense face of the man who had raised her after she was orphaned at 15. Robert avoided direct eye contact and walked to the window, observing the property as if searching for something or someone. His large hands, calloused from farm work, trembled slightly as he ran his fingers through his graying hair. "The main house is going to need urgent repairs. Structural problems that could be dangerous for the children," he replied. But there was something in his voice that wasn't convincing. "The treehouse is in perfect condition. You'll be safe there." Emma, Rachel's eldest daughter at 8 years old, tugged on her mother's yellow skirt with childish curiosity. "Mom, are we going to live in a real tree, like in cartoons?" "It's temporary, sweetie," Rachel answered, still trying to understand the situation. "Uncle Robert, how long would this move be?" The man hesitated before answering, and that prolonged silence increased Rachel's anxiety. She had known Robert for years and could recognize when he was hiding something important. "As long as necessary," was the vague answer he offered. Olivia, 6, and Noah, 4, ran toward the tree, which stood about 200 yards from the main house. The imposing structure impressed anyone seeing it for the first time. The trunk was over 10 feet in diameter, and the canopy spread over a huge area, providing natural shade for much of the land. The house built among the main branches looked like it came from a fairy tale, with small windows and a spiral staircase that wound around the trunk. "At least the children are excited," Robert commented, trying to bring some lightness to the moment. Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her uncle had always been straightforward with his words, never one to make excuses or hide information. The insistence on an immediate move and the vagueness about the reasons triggered all her maternal protective instincts. "Robert, you're scaring me. What's really going on?" she insisted, putting the baby in the stroller and crossing her arms in a posture that showed her determination to get answers. The man sighed deeply and approached her, lowering his voice so the children wouldn't hear. "Rachel, I need you to trust me, to trust. There are things you don't know, things about this property and about your family. For now, the most important thing is to keep you safe," he said, placing his hands on his niece's shoulders. "The treehouse is the safest place around here." This answer only intensified Rachel's concern. Robert was talking about safety as if there were some kind of real threat, but she couldn't imagine what kind of danger could exist on a peaceful rural property in the interior of Tennessee. "Safety from what, Uncle? From whom?" "Please, just trust me. You'll understand everything soon," was the only answer she could get from him. Reluctant but respecting the man who had always cared for her like a father, Rachel agreed to the move. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity, packing clothes and essentials for her and the 4 children. Robert showed surprising efficiency, as if he had planned everything in advance. He had installed a small functional kitchen in the treehouse, with a refrigerator, stove, and sink, and had also provided comfortable mattresses and clean blankets. The treehouse was larger inside than it appeared from the outside. The main space measured about 13 feet by 16, with a ceiling height of 8 feet. There were 2 windows offering views of different parts of the property, and the feeling of being suspended among the branches created a unique, almost magical atmosphere. The children explored every corner with enthusiasm, turning the move into a great adventure. "Mom, look! From here I can see the whole farm," exclaimed Emma from the main window. Olivia discovered a small hidden compartment behind a wooden wall which contained old books and toys from past eras. Noah was fascinated by the spiral staircase and went up and down several times, laughing with each complete turn. When night fell, Rachel managed to get all the children to sleep. Ethan, at 6 months old, adapted well to the new environment and slept peacefully in the small crib Robert had provided. She stayed awake for a long time, looking out the window toward the main house, trying to understand what had prompted such a sudden move. Robert appeared the next morning with breakfast ready and supplies for several days. He seemed to have slept poorly, with evident dark circles and a worried expression he tried to disguise in front of the children. "How was the first night?" he asked, handing over a basket with fresh bread and fruit. "The children loved it, but I'm still confused about all this," replied Rachel, taking advantage of the children playing outside to try another conversation. "Are you going to explain what's happening?" "Soon, Rachel. I need to take care of a few things first," was again the evasive answer. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. During the following days, a strange routine was established. Robert appeared 3 times a day with prepared meals and supplies, always checking if they were okay, but keeping conversations superficial that avoided any explanation about the situation. Rachel noticed that he installed some discreet cameras around the tree, claiming it was to monitor their safety, but this only increased her suspicion. "Uncle, why did you install these cameras?" she questioned during one of his visits. "It's just a precaution. This region sometimes gets unwanted visitors," he replied, adjusting one of the cameras. "This way I can rest easy knowing you're all right." The answer didn't convince her. Rachel had known the property since she was a child and had never witnessed problems with intruders or dangerous visitors. The area was peaceful, with neighbors known for decades, and a general sense of security that had always reassured her. Emma began asking increasingly specific questions about when they would return to the main house. The girl missed her room and the toys left behind. Olivia and Noah, being younger, seemed to have adapted better to the move, turning each day in the tree into a new adventure. Ethan continued growing normally, oblivious to the complexities of the situation. In the first week of staying at the treehouse, Rachel decided to explore the surroundings better, to familiarize herself with the environment. It was during this exploration that she made a discovery that would change everything. A small metal box partially buried in the soil, near the main roots of the tree. Inside the box, she found a letter written in her late mother's own hand, Hope Thompson. The discovery left her in shock, as she had no knowledge of that document's existence. The letter was dated 20 years ago, shortly before her mother died in a car accident that also claimed Rachel's father. The letter revealed surprising information about the property and hereditary rights that Rachel was completely unaware of. Hope wrote about important documents hidden somewhere on the farm, documents that could guarantee financial stability for the family for generations. She also mentioned something about the tree having a special protected status that prevented any sale or transfer of the area where it was located. Rachel ran back to the treehouse with the letter in her hands, her heart racing from the discovery. She needed to show it to Robert and demand immediate explanations. When he appeared with lunch, she confronted him directly. "Robert, I found this buried near the tree," she said, showing the letter. "Did you know about this document?" The man's face visibly paled when he saw the letter. His hands trembled slightly as he took the paper, and his eyes quickly scanned the content as if he already knew what it was about. "Where did you find this?" he asked, avoiding looking directly at her. "Buried right there." "Robert, my mother talks about important documents and about rights I have to this property. Did you always know about this?" Rachel's voice carried a mix of anxiety and irritation. Robert sighed deeply and sat on one of the wooden benches he had placed around the tree. The weight of the secrets he carried seemed to be finally taking its toll. "Rachel, Your mother was a very wise woman. She foresaw that one day this property could be at risk and took steps to protect the family's future. He began, choosing his words carefully. Yes, I knew about some documents, but not about this specific letter. What kind of risk? What are you talking about? She insisted. Before he could answer, the sound of an arriving car interrupted the conversation. A man in a suit got out of a black vehicle and walked toward them with an executive briefcase in hand. Robert became visibly tense at the arrival of the unexpected visitor. Good afternoon. I am Attorney David Mitchell. The man introduced himself, extending his hand to greet them. I am looking for Mrs. Rachel Thompson. That's me, replied Rachel, intrigued that an unknown lawyer was specifically looking for her. Mrs. Rachel, I represent a company interested in acquiring this property. We would like to make an offer we consider very advantageous for all parties involved, said the lawyer, opening his briefcase. Robert stood up abruptly, positioning himself protectively between the lawyer and Rachel. The property is not for sale, he declared firmly. Mr. Robert, I understand your position, but I believe Mrs. Rachel, as the legitimate heir, should at least hear our proposal, insisted the attorney, trying to circumvent Robert's resistance. Rachel immediately sensed the strange dynamic of the situation. The attorney knew exactly who she was and was aware of details about her inheritance situation, information she herself had only discovered moments before through her mother's letter. Robert was showing a disproportionate agitation for a simple purchase proposal, as if something far more complex were at stake. What kind of company do you represent, and how did you know I was here? Asked Rachel, determined to understand the situation. We represent a group of investors interested in sustainable development in the Smoky Mountains region. We conducted extensive research on properties with strategic potential, and this one stood out due to its unique characteristics, explained the attorney, handing over an elegant business card. Robert took the card before Rachel could reach it and examined it with suspicion. Sustainable development or commercial exploitation? He questioned directly. Mr. Robert, our plans involve environmental preservation associated with responsible ecotourism. This property possesses exceptional natural elements that could benefit from professional investment, the attorney replied diplomatically. Rachel looked around, trying to identify the exceptional natural elements mentioned by the attorney. The property was beautiful and well preserved, but it didn't seem to her to have such extraordinary features as to justify the specific interest of outside investors. What exceptional natural elements? She asked. The attorney hesitated for a moment before answering, as if he had revealed more than he intended. The diversity of the forest, the interesting topography, and of course this magnificent tree which could become a unique tourist attraction, he said, looking at the tree where they were living. Robert sensed the attorney was being evasive and decided to be more direct. Attorney David, what do you really want here? Because I get the impression there's more to this than ecotourism, he confronted him. Mr. Robert, our proposal is transparent and advantageous. We offer $60,000 for the entire property, a value well above market price for rural land in the region, announced the attorney, pulling a document from his briefcase. The mentioned amount surprised Rachel. It was truly a lot of money, enough to solve all the financial problems she faced as a single mother and secure a comfortable future for the 4 children. Robert, however, showed irritation at the proposal. $60,000 for a property you yourselves admit has exceptional elements. That doesn't seem like a fair value to me, he observed. The attorney adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable with the resistance he encountered. The amount can be negotiated, of course, but we need a prompt answer, as we have other projects underway in the region, he said, creating an artificial sense of urgency. Rachel felt she was losing control of the situation. Questions about inheritance, mysterious documents, unexpected purchase proposals, and the forced move to the treehouse all seemed connected in some way she couldn't yet grasp. Attorney David, I need time to analyze all of this. I only discovered today that I have inheritance rights I was unaware of, and I need to better understand the situation before making any decision, she said, trying to maintain control of the conversation. I understand perfectly, Mrs. Rachel, but I would like to make it clear that our proposal has a limited time frame. Other investors have also shown interest in the region, and we cannot keep our offer open indefinitely," replied the attorney, applying more psychological pressure. Robert approached Rachel and whispered in her ear, "Don't make any decision now. There are things you need to know first." The attorney put the documents back in his briefcase and prepared to leave. "Ms. Rachel, I'll leave my card and will be waiting for your call, but I remind you that opportunities like this are rare and should not be wasted," he said, heading to his car. After the man left, Rachel turned to Robert with an expression that would no longer tolerate evasion. "Now you're going to explain everything. What's going on here? Why does this attorney know so much about my inheritance situation? And why are you so agitated over a simple purchase proposal?" Robert looked at the treehouse where the children played, oblivious to the complexities of the adult world, and made a decision he had been putting off for days. "Rachel, sit down. It's time you knew the truth about everything." For the next 2 hours, Robert revealed information that completely transformed Rachel's understanding of her family and the property. He told her about a pure water spring located exactly beneath the century-old tree, a natural source that supplied not only their property, but also several artesian wells in the region. This spring had incalculable strategic value for companies interested in commercial mineral water exploitation. "Your mother discovered this years ago and took legal measures to protect the area," explained Robert. "The tree was registered as inalienable family heritage, which means no one can sell or transfer it. Anyone who lives here is automatically protected by this legislation." Rachel processed the information with difficulty. Moving to the treehouse wasn't just about renovations in the main house, but a legal protection strategy against pressure from companies interested in the spring. "Why didn't you tell me this from the start?" she asked, feeling betrayed by the lack of transparency. "Because I didn't know how you would react. I thought you might reject the idea out of pride, or because you might find it a humiliating situation," he admitted. "But when the first interested parties in the property began to appear, I realized I needed to act quickly to protect you." The revelation explained many things: the urgency of the move, the security cameras, Robert's agitation with the attorney's arrival, and especially the excessive valuation of the property offered by the investors. "How many companies have already shown interest?" asked Rachel. "This is the third different company in 2 months. The others were more direct in their approaches, almost intimidating," revealed Robert. "That's why I decided you needed to be in the treehouse, where you are legally protected." Emma came running up, interrupting the adult's serious conversation. "Mom, can I play near the spring? The water is so clean," said the girl, pointing to a nearby area where crystal-clear water naturally sprang from the ground. Rachel looked where her daughter pointed and saw for the first time the spring Robert had mentioned. The water emerged gently from the rocky soil and formed a small stream that wound through the property. It was truly an impressive natural spectacle, and she couldn't understand how she had never paid attention to that detail before. "Of course, honey, but don't go too far," replied Rachel, looking with new eyes at the natural treasure her family possessed. Robert approached the spring with Rachel, explaining more details about the hydrological importance of the area. "This water supplies 12 artesian wells in the region. If a company manages to control the spring, they could influence the water supply for hundreds of families," he explained, showing how the stream extended beyond the property boundaries. The scale of the problem began to become clear to Rachel. This wasn't just a family matter, but something that affected the entire local community. The responsibility to protect that spring weighed on her shoulders in a way she hadn't anticipated. "What happens if I decide to sell?" she asked, testing Robert's knowledge of the legal implications. "Legally, you cannot sell the area with the tree and the spring due to the inalienable heritage registration made by your mother. But you could sell the rest of the property, which would give companies close access to the spring and would facilitate future pressures," he explained. "And if I don't sell anything? They will probably intensify the pressure. I've already heard rumors about companies using unethical methods to get what they want," said Robert, with evident concern in his voice. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of another vehicle arriving. This time it was a different car, with 2 men who looked more intimidating than the elegant lawyer from the morning. Robert immediately positioned himself between the visitors and Rachel, signaling for her to stay close to the children. "Good afternoon. "We're looking for the owner of this land," said the first man, with an accent that wasn't from the region. "Can I help you with something?" replied Robert, maintaining a cordial but firm tone. "We need to speak with Rachel Thompson about an urgent business proposal," said the second man, showing specific knowledge of who they were looking for. Rachel felt a chill, realizing that more people knew exactly where to find her. The situation was getting complicated in a way that made her extremely uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we are representatives of Mountain Waters Investments. Our company has a specific interest in the hydrological characteristics of this property," said the first man, taking control of the conversation. Robert exchanged a significant look with Rachel. The company was directly mentioning hydrological characteristics, confirming they knew about the spring's existence and its strategic value. "What kind of interest?" asked Rachel, deciding to face the situation directly. "We would like to propose a business partnership. You keep the property, but grant us water spring exploitation rights. It's an arrangement that can be very profitable for both parties," explained the second man. The proposal was different from the one offered by the lawyer that morning, but Rachel realized the ultimate goal was the same: to gain control over the water spring. The difference was in the approach, which now tried to seem more advantageous by keeping the land ownership with the family. "How much are you offering for these exploitation rights?" she asked, curious about the amounts involved. $10,000 annually for the water usage rights, with a 20-year contract that renews automatically," replied the first man. Rachel did the math mentally. $200,000 over 20 years was a significant sum, but she began to suspect the spring's real value was much greater than any company was willing to offer. "And what volume of water do you intend to extract?" asked Robert, demonstrating knowledge of the technical aspects of the issue. The two men looked at each other uncomfortably before answering. "We would conduct a technical analysis to determine the sustainable extraction volume," said the second man, avoiding giving specific numbers. Robert knew the region's water resources well and knew that intensive commercial extraction could affect the neighbors' artesian wells. "And what if this extraction affects the neighbors' water supply?" he asked directly. "Our preliminary studies indicate there is sufficient water to meet both commercial needs and local demands," replied the first man, but his answer sounded rehearsed and unconvincing. Rachel observed that both men avoided looking directly at the spring, as if they didn't want to reveal how much they knew about its specific characteristics. This confirmed her suspicion that they had conducted detailed prior research on the property before making their approach. "I need time to consider the proposal," she said, using the same strategy that had worked with the attorney that morning. "Ms. Rachel, our proposal has a limited time frame. We have other options in the region and cannot wait indefinitely," said the second man, applying the same psychological pressure used by the previous attorney. Robert noticed the pattern in the approaches of the different companies and decided to test his suspicions. "Interesting that you also mention other options in the region. Are there many water springs in the area?" he asked, feigning innocence. "There are several water sources, but this property has specific characteristics that interest us," replied the first man, revealing more than he intended. "What specific characteristics?" insisted Robert. The men became visibly uncomfortable with the persistence of the technical questions. "Sir, our company has conducted comprehensive geological studies of the region. This spring has volume and quality that make it commercially viable," explained the second man, trying to close the subject. Rachel understood that the companies possessed detailed technical information about her property, information she herself did not have. This put her at a disadvantage in negotiations and increased her suspicion about the true intentions of the interested parties. "Attorney, may I see a copy of these geological studies you mentioned?" she asked, trying to obtain more information. "The studies contain confidential technical information, but we can share the general results after signing a confidentiality agreement," replied the first man. The answer confirmed for Rachel that the companies knew much more about her property than she did. She decided she needed independent counsel before considering any proposal. "Gentlemen, I appreciate the interest, but I will need to consult an independent attorney before making any decision regarding exploitation rights," she said firmly. The two men exchanged glances with poorly disguised irritation. Ms. Rachel, we hope you understand that opportunities like this don't come along every day. It would be a shame to miss a chance to secure financial stability for your family, said the second man, in a tone that sounded almost like a veiled threat. Robert moved closer to Rachel, signaling support and protection in the face of the visitor's change in tone. My niece will make the decision she considers best for the family. Any unnecessary pressure will be interpreted as intimidation, he declared, making it clear he would not tolerate threats. The men realized their approach had become counterproductive and decided to back down. Naturally, we respect the time needed for important decisions. We'll leave our card and await contact, said the first man, handing over a simple professional card. After the visitor's departure, Rachel felt emotionally drained. 2 different companies in a single day, both with detailed knowledge about her and the spring, created a pressure she was not prepared to face. Robert, I need to better understand my legal rights regarding this property. You mentioned that my mother took protective measures, but I need to know exactly what that means in practice, she said. Tomorrow we can go to the town clerk's office and check all the official records. Your mother was very organized with legal documentation, he promised. Emma approached the adults, sensing the tension in the air. Mum, why were those men speaking so seriously? Were they angry? Asked the girl with childlike curiosity. No, sweetie. They were just people making business proposals. Nothing for you to worry about, replied Rachel, trying to reassure her daughter. Can I keep playing near the water? Insisted Emma. Yes, but don't go too far and always tell us where you are, said Rachel, observing how the children had naturally adapted to the new environment. During the night, while the children slept, Rachel lay awake thinking about everything she had discovered that day. Her mother's letter, the company's proposals, the revelation about the spring, and especially the responsibility that now weighed on her shoulders. She wasn't just a mother trying to raise 4 children with financial difficulties, but also the guardian of a natural resource that affected the entire local community. The weight of the responsibility frightened her, but it also awakened a determination she didn't know she possessed. Her mother had foreseen this situation and taken measures to protect the family and the neighbors. Now it was up to her to honor that legacy in a way that would benefit everyone involved. Robert appeared the next morning with breakfast and worrying news. Rachel, during the night I saw strange activity near the property boundaries. People with flashlights walking and taking measurements, he reported, with a concerned expression. Measurements? What kind of measurements? She asked, feeling her anxiety rise. They seem to be mapping the course of the stream that comes from the spring. Probably studying how the water is distributed through the region, explained Robert. The information confirmed Rachel's suspicions about the level of technical knowledge the companies possessed. They weren't making blind offers, but rather proposals based on detailed studies of the property's water resources. Is that legal? Can they enter the property without permission to take measurements? She asked. No, but enforcement in these rural areas is complicated, and if they were on the property boundaries, technically they weren't trespassing, explained Robert. Rachel decided she needed professional help to fully understand her rights and options. The situation was becoming more complex than she could handle alone. Robert, do you know any independent attorney who can advise me on environmental law and rural property issues? She asked. I know attorney Stephen Harris in Gatlinburg. He's an expert in environmental law and has helped other rural landowners in the region with similar issues, he suggested. Let's consult him today. I need to understand exactly what my rights are before more interested companies show up, decided Rachel. The trip to Gatlinburg revealed more aspects of the situation that Rachel hadn't considered. Robert explained during the journey that several rural properties in the region had received similar proposals in recent months, creating widespread pressure on local landowners. It's a coordinated strategy. They make simultaneous offers to several owners, hoping someone will accept and set a precedent to pressure the others, explained Robert. How many properties are being pressured? Asked Rachel. At least 12 families that I know of, all with interesting water features, springs, artesian wells, or proximity to watercourses, he replied. The regional scale of the problem made Rachel realize her situation wasn't isolated, but part of a larger movement of companies interested in the water resources of the Smoky Mountains region. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. Attorney Stephen Harris was a 60-year-old man with extensive experience in environmental and rural issues. His office in Gatlinburg was filled with law books and maps of the region, demonstrating deep knowledge of the area's geographic and legal characteristics. Rachel, your mother was very wise to register the tree as inalienable family heritage. This type of registration creates robust legal protection that is very difficult to challenge, explained the attorney, examining the documents Robert had brought. What does that mean exactly in practice, she asked. It means you cannot sell, transfer, or mortgage the specific area where the tree and the spring are located. Anyone residing in that area is automatically protected against eviction or repossession actions, clarified Attorney Stephen. What about the rest of the property? The remainder can be sold normally, but the protected area remains inalienable regardless of who owns the adjacent lands, he explained. Rachel began to understand her mother's strategy. By specifically protecting the spring area, she ensured that no company could gain total control over the water resources, even if they managed to buy the rest of the property. Attorney, the companies that approached me mentioned geological studies of the region. Can they conduct these studies without my authorization? She asked. Studies on private property require the owner's authorization, but studies on public areas or via satellite imagery are legal, replied the attorney. What if they conducted unauthorized studies on my property? That would constitute trespassing, and you could take legal action. But it would be necessary to prove the trespass occurred, explained Attorney Stephen. Robert mentioned the nighttime movements he had observed, and the attorney confirmed that could constitute trespassing if it were proven they entered the property without permission. Attorney, I have 4 small children, and I'm worried about safety. Can these companies use intimidating methods to pressure landowners? Asked Rachel. Unfortunately, there are reports of companies using excessive psychological pressure or questionable methods. If you feel threatened in any way, you should contact the police immediately, advised the attorney. Is there any way to better protect myself legally? We can file a formal notification stating that you do not authorize studies or activities on your property. This creates an official record that can be used if there are future violations, suggested Attorney Stephen. Rachel decided to file the notification immediately. The attorney prepared the document and explained it would be registered at the local notary's office, creating an official record of her position on unauthorized activities on her property. Attorney, the offers I've received seem to be below the real value of the water resources. How can I properly assess what my spring is worth? She asked. An independent hydrogeological study would be needed to determine the water volume and quality. I can recommend qualified professionals who do this type of assessment, offered the attorney. How much does that type of study cost? Between $1,000 and $2,000, depending on the complexity. But considering the amounts involved in the offers you've received, the investment would be justified, explained Attorney Stephen. Rachel didn't have the financial resources to commission the study immediately, but she decided she would need to find a way to obtain it to negotiate on equal footing with the interested companies. Is there any form of funding or support for small rural landowners who need this kind of assessment? She asked. There are some government support programs, but the process is slow. An alternative would be to form a consortium with other landowners in the region who are facing similar situations. By splitting the costs, it would become more feasible for everyone, suggested the attorney. The consortium idea greatly interested Rachel. If other landowners were facing similar pressures, it made sense to join forces to confront the companies in an organized way. Can you help me get in touch with these other landowners? She asked. Yes, I can. Some have already come to me with similar questions, and I believe they would be interested in a collective action, confirmed Attorney Stephen. Back at the property, Rachel felt more confident about her legal rights, but also more aware of the complexity of the situation she faced. The children ran to greet her, eager to know where she had been. "Mom, did you go to take care of important things?" asked Emma, always curious about adult activities. "Yes, honey. I went to talk to an attorney about our treehouse and about our property," explained Rachel, adapting her answer for a child's understanding. Our treehouse is really special, isn't it, Mum? Said Olivia, hugging her mother. Very special, sweetheart. More special than I imagined, replied Rachel, looking at the century-old tree with a new perspective on its importance. In the following days, Attorney Stephen managed to put Rachel in contact with 5 other rural landowners in the region who were facing similar situations. The group's first meeting took place at Mrs. Dorothy's property, a 70-year-old woman who owned a smaller spring, but one equally coveted by interested companies. Rachel, it's so nice to meet you. Stephen told me about your situation, and it seems very similar to what we're facing here, said Mrs. Dorothy, welcoming the group into her rustic home. The other landowners present were Mr. William James, 65 years old, owner of a property with 3 artesian wells, Mrs. Patricia, 58 years old, whose property had a stream that supplied several houses in the neighborhood, Mr. Paul Robert, 45 years old, with a spring that fed a small pond, and Mrs. Margaret, 62 years old, owner of land with several smaller springs. Each one reported similar experiences, companies appearing with attractive proposals, detailed knowledge about the water resources on the properties, and psychological pressure for quick acceptance of the offers. The pattern was so consistent, it left no doubt about the coordination of the approaches. Mrs. Dorothy, how many different companies have made you offers? Asked Rachel. 3 companies so far. The first offered $40,000 for the entire property. The second proposed a partnership to exploit the spring. The third came with a more aggressive approach, suggesting I could have legal problems if I didn't cooperate, reported the woman, visibly worried. Legal problems? What kind of problems? Asked Mr. William James. They said something about environmental regulations and that I might be violating laws by using the spring water without a proper license, explained Mrs. Dorothy. Attorney Stephen, who was attending the meeting, clarified the issue. That's an intimidation tactic. Rural landowners have the right to use water that naturally springs on their land, as long as they don't cause significant environmental impact. Companies use misinformation to create legal uncertainty. Mr. Paul Roberts shared a similar experience. They also tried to convince me that I needed specific permits to use my own spring. When I contacted the environmental agency, I discovered it was a lie, he reported. The exchange of experiences revealed that companies were using incorrect information about environmental legislation to pressure rural landowners who lacked technical knowledge about their water rights. Everyone, I think we need to organize to confront this situation collectively, proposed Rachel. Individually we are vulnerable, but together we can hire proper technical studies and legal counsel. The proposal was met with enthusiasm by all present. Mrs. Margaret suggested forming a formal association of rural landowners in the region, which would give more legitimacy for collective negotiations and facilitate access to government support programs. Margaret, that's an excellent idea. An association can request free technical support from universities and environmental agencies for water resource studies, confirmed Attorney Stephen. The group decided to meet weekly to organize the association and develop joint strategies. Rachel offered to host the next meeting on her property, taking the opportunity to show the others the spring and the treehouse where she was living. Returning home, Rachel felt hopeful for the first time since the situation had begun. Having found other landowners facing similar problems made her feel less isolated and more confident about her chances of resisting the company's pressures. The children noticed the change in her mood, and Emma commented during dinner, "Mom, you seem happier today. Did something good happen?" "Yes, sweetie. I met some very good people who are going to help us protect our treehouse and our water," explained Rachel, simplifying the situation for the children's understanding. "Is our water really that important?" asked Olivia. "Very important, love. It's one of the most precious things we have," replied Rachel, looking out the treehouse window toward the spring. The following week, the group's second meeting took place on Rachel's property. The other landowners were impressed by the beauty of the spring and the originality of the treehouse. Mrs. Dorothy commented that she had never seen a water source so clear and abundant. "Rachel, your spring is truly exceptional. The water volume is much greater than on our properties," observed Mr. William James. That's why the company's interest is so intense. This spring likely has the capacity for large-scale commercial supply, added Mrs. Patricia. The collective analysis confirmed Rachel's suspicions about the exceptional value of her property. This explained why she was receiving more pressure and more aggressive offers than the other landowners. During the meeting, the group formalized the creation of the Green Mountains Rural Landowners Association, chose a provisional board, and defined the first actions to be implemented. Rachel was chosen as secretary, Mrs. Margaret as president, and Mr. William James as treasurer. The first approved action was to jointly commission a hydrogeological study of all associated properties. The cost would be split among the members, making it feasible for everyone. The second action was to officially register the association and request technical support from local universities for complementary environmental studies. Everyone, I think we should also officially inform the companies that any future negotiation must be done through the association, suggested Rachel. Excellent idea. That prevents them from continuing to make intimidating individual approaches, agreed Mrs. Margaret. Attorney Stephen prepared a formal notification that was sent to all companies that had approached the association members. The document informed them of the association's formation and established that future negotiations must be conducted through collective representation. The company's response to the notification was swift and revealing. Instead of accepting collective bargaining, they intensified individual approaches, offering higher amounts and creating artificial urgency in their proposals. This confirmed they preferred to negotiate with isolated and vulnerable landowners. Their reaction proves our strategy is right, commented Mrs. Dorothy during a phone conversation with Rachel. If they prefer to negotiate individually, it's because they know collectively we are stronger. Rachel agreed, but also realized that collective resistance could lead to more aggressive retaliation from the companies. She decided to install additional security cameras around the treehouse and the spring, using her limited savings to ensure greater protection for the family. Rachel's suspicions about possible retaliation were confirmed when Robert reported that he had caught people taking illegal measurements on the property in the early hours. This time he managed to photograph the intruders and filed a police report at the local station. Rachel, they had professional equipment measuring the spring's flow and collecting water samples, reported Robert, showing the photos he had taken. Were you able to identify which company they were from? She asked. They had no uniforms or visible identification, but the vehicle had New York license plates. They're probably specialists hired by the interested companies, said Robert. The nighttime trespass was the first serious incident related to the corporate pressure. Attorney Stephen advised that it be formally documented and that the evidence be preserved for potential future legal action. Stephen, could this escalate into something more serious? Asked Rachel, worried about the children's safety. It's possible. When a lot of money is involved, some companies may use questionable methods. I recommend you consider additional security measures, advised the attorney. The suggestion of additional security measures worried Rachel. She didn't have the resources to hire professional security and relied mainly on Robert for property protection. The situation was becoming more tense than she had anticipated. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. The tension increased when a fourth company appeared with a completely different approach. Instead of making business proposals, representatives from Hydroplan Development arrived with documents claiming there were irregularities in the registration of Rachel's property and that she could lose her rights to the land if she didn't regularize the situation immediately. Ms. Rachel, our legal studies have identified problems in this property's documentation that could result in serious legal issues, said the main representative, an intimidating-looking man dressed in a black suit. What kind of problems? Asked Rachel, feeling her stomach tighten with the new threat. There are inconsistencies in the inheritance records that could be legally challenged. Our company offers regularization services that can resolve these pending issues, explained the second representative. Robert immediately positioned himself beside Rachel, realizing this was a more sophisticated intimidation attempt. What inconsistencies? The property has been in the family for 3 generations, and all records are in order, he stated firmly. Sir, the legislation on rural inheritance has changed several times in recent decades. Properties that haven't been properly updated may face legal challenges, insisted the first representative. Rachel realized this was a new tactic. Instead of making purchase offers, they were trying to create legal uncertainty about the very legitimacy of her ownership of the property. "May I see these legal studies you mentioned?" she asked, determined not to be intimidated. "The studies contain complex technical information, but we can explain the main issues identified," replied the second representative, avoiding showing specific documents. "I prefer to see the original documents and consult my own attorney before discussing any regularization," said Rachel, maintaining firmness in her position. The representatives became visibly irritated with the resistance they encountered. "Ms. Rachel, regularization processes are more efficient when handled quickly. Delays can complicate the situation and make regularization more expensive," said the first representative, applying pressure through veiled threats about future costs. "My niece will make whatever decisions she deems appropriate to protect the family's interests. Any excessive pressure will be interpreted as an attempt at coercion," declared Robert, making it clear he would not tolerate intimidation. The representatives realized their approach wasn't working and decided to intensify the pressure. "Mr. Robert, we only want to help the family avoid future legal problems. Ignoring regularization issues could result in complete loss of the property," said the second representative, with a poorly disguised threatening tone. Rachel felt her blood boil at the direct threat, but managed to stay calm. "Gentlemen, I appreciate the concern, but I will consult my attorney about any regularization issue. If there are real problems with the documentation, he will guide me properly," she said, ending the conversation. "We hope you understand the urgency of the situation, Ms. Rachel. Irregularity issues with rural properties can escalate quickly when there is third-party interest in the area," said the first representative, implying that other companies could use the alleged irregularities against her. After the representatives left, Rachel immediately called Attorney Stephen, reporting the new intimidating approach. "Stephen, they are claiming irregularities in the property documentation. Is that possible?" she asked, with evident anxiety in her voice. "Rachel, it's a common tactic. Companies with resources hire attorneys to look for any small irregularity in old documents and then use that as a form of pressure," explained the attorney. "Is there any real irregularity in my documentation? I will do a complete analysis of all the documents, but from what I've already examined, your property is properly registered and your ownership is legitimate," reassured Attorney Stephen. "And if they find some minor irregularity?" "Minor irregularities can be easily corrected through simple administrative procedures. They do not represent a risk of property loss," explained the attorney. The conversation with Attorney Stephen reassured her, but also made her realize that the companies were willing to use any strategy to get what they wanted. The escalation from commercial offers to legal intimidation demonstrated the value they placed on the water resources on her property. At the next association meeting, Rachel reported the new intimidating approach and discovered that other members had also received similar claims about documentary irregularities. "Mrs. Patricia, did they also question your property's documentation?" asked Rachel. "Yes, they said my deed had issues because it wasn't updated with the latest rural legislation changes," confirmed Mrs. Patricia. "And Mr. William James? They claimed the division of inheritance for my property didn't follow current procedures and that this could be legally challenged," reported Mr. William James. The pattern was clear. All the companies were using claims about documentary irregularities as a new form of pressure. Attorney Stephen confirmed this was a coordinated strategy to create legal insecurity among the landowners. "Everyone, this confirms our collective resistance is bothering them. They changed tactics because they realized the business proposals weren't working," analyzed the attorney. "What can we do to protect ourselves from these false claims?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "I will conduct a complete analysis of the documentation for all associated properties and prepare a legal report confirming the regularity of the deeds. This will create a solid defense against any questioning," proposed Attorney Stephen. The association approved the proposal, and also decided to hire a second attorney specializing in rural property to get a second opinion on the documentation. The measure would generate additional costs, but it was necessary to ensure adequate protection against the company's new tactics. During this phase of increased tension, Rachel began to observe changes in the children's behavior. Emma asked more questions about the men in suits who appeared on the property, showing childhood anxiety about the situation. Olivia and Noah played less near the spring, preferring to stay closer to the treehouse where they felt protected. "Mum, why do those men always come here to ask serious questions?" asked Emma during dinner. "Honey, they are people who work with business and want to talk about our property." "But it's nothing for you to worry about," replied Rachel, trying to minimize her daughter's anxiety. "Are they going to make us leave our treehouse?" insisted Emma, revealing she understood more of the situation than Rachel imagined. "No, sweetheart, our treehouse is protected, and no one can make us leave here," assured Rachel, speaking more to convince herself than to reassure her daughter. Ethan, now 7 months old, continued developing normally, oblivious to the complexities of the situation. His healthy growth in the treehouse demonstrated that the alternative environment was not harming his development, which reassured Rachel about the living conditions she was providing for her children. The situation took an unexpected turn when Robert discovered that one of the companies had filed a request with the local town hall for feasibility studies on water exploitation in the region where Rachel's property was located. The official document suggested there were alternative legal pathways for the companies to gain access to water resources, even without the landowner's agreement. To Rachel, they filed a request for a feasibility study claiming public interest in developing the region's water resources, reported Robert, showing a copy of the document he had obtained at the town hall. "Public interest? What does that mean?" she asked, feeling a new wave of anxiety. "They are trying to use public interest legislation to justify studies in the region, even without the landowner's authorization," explained Robert. Attorney Stephen confirmed the strategy was technically possible, but difficult to implement in practice. "Stephen, can they get authorization for studies on my property by claiming public interest?" asked Rachel. "It's possible, but it would have to be proven that there is a real public benefit and that there are no viable alternatives in other areas," explained the attorney. "And how can I defend myself against this?" "We can contest it by arguing that your spring already serves the public interest by supplying the region's artesian wells through the natural watercourse. Modifying this system could harm the current supply," suggested Attorney Stephen. The proposed defense made sense and had a solid technical basis. Rachel's spring already served the public interest naturally, supplying several families in the region through artesian wells connected to the underground water system. Any intensive commercial exploitation could harm this natural supply. "Stephen, do we need a technical study that proves how my spring supplies the region's wells?" asked Rachel. "Yes, it would be fundamental for our defense, and fortunately that is exactly the type of study the association has already decided to hire," confirmed the attorney. The hydrogeological study commissioned by the association gained even more strategic importance. Besides determining the value of the water resources, it would also provide technical evidence to defend the public interest in the natural supply system. The technician responsible for the study, engineer Daniel Peterson, arrived at Rachel's property with sophisticated equipment to measure flow rate, water quality, and hydrological connectivity with other sources in the region. His first assessment confirmed that the spring was exceptional in both volume and quality. "Mrs. Rachel, your spring has truly special characteristics. The flow rate is approximately 4,000 gallons per hour, and the water quality meets the most stringent standards for human consumption," reported engineer Daniel. "Is 4,000 gallons per hour a lot?" she asked, trying to grasp the scale of the numbers. "It's a very significant flow rate, enough to supply a small town or for large-scale commercial exploitation," explained the technician. The confirmation of the spring's exceptional value left her both proud and worried. It was gratifying to know she possessed such a valuable resource, but it also intensified her anxiety about the pressures she would face to keep it under family control. "Engineer Daniel, how can I know if my spring is connected to the neighbor's wells?" she asked. We'll conduct tracer tests to map the underground connections. This will allow us to determine exactly which wells would be affected by changes to your spring, explained the technician. The tracer tests revealed surprising information. Rachel's spring was connected to 17 artesian wells in the region, indirectly supplying more than 40 families. Any significant reduction in the spring's flow would directly affect the water supply of that entire community. Engineer Daniel, if a company commercially exploited my spring, what would happen to the neighbor's supply? Asked Rachel. It would depend on the intensity of the exploitation. Large-scale commercial extraction could significantly reduce water availability in the connected wells, replied the technician. And would that be legal? It would only be legal if the company obtained environmental permits that considered the impact on the regional supply. And those permits are difficult to obtain when there is a risk to the supply of established communities, explained Engineer Daniel. The information from the technical study provided solid arguments for defending the community's interests. Rachel's spring was not just a valuable resource, but also an essential element for the water supply of dozens of families who depended on the connected artesian wells. Armed with this information, Rachel decided to organize a meeting with all the neighbors affected by the water system connected to her spring. It was important that they understood how their lives could be impacted by any commercial exploitation of the region's water resources. The meeting took place at the local school and was attended by representatives from 32 families who depended on the area's artesian wells. Engineer Daniel presented the results of the technical study, showing detailed maps of the underground connections between the spring and the wells. Everyone, this study shows that the spring on Rachel's property is fundamental to the water supply of our entire community, explained Engineer Daniel, pointing to the map projected on the wall. The revelation caused surprise and concern among the participants. Many families did not know that their wells were connected to Rachel's spring and that they could be affected by any change in its exploitation. Engineer Daniel, if Rachel sold the spring to a company, would our wells dry up? Asked Mrs. Margaret, a 73-year-old neighbor who depended completely on her artesian well. They wouldn't necessarily dry up, but the flow could be significantly reduced. In extreme cases, some smaller wells could stop working, explained the technician. And what can we do to protect ourselves? Asked Mr. Noah, owner of a small farm that used well water for raising animals. Attorney Stephen, who was attending the meeting, clarified the legal options available to the community. You can form a water users association and request that the spring be classified as being of social interest. This would create legal protection against commercial exploitation that harms the community's supply, suggested the lawyer. The proposal was met with enthusiasm by the participants. Forming a water users association would legally strengthen the position of the entire community and create additional protection for Rachel's spring. Rachel, would you agree to be our representative in this association? Asked Mrs. Margaret. After all, the spring is on your property, and you're already organized with the Rural Landowners Association. Rachel accepted the responsibility, understanding that her fight to protect the spring had transformed into a collective cause that would benefit the entire local community. The connection between her spring and her neighbor's supply created a natural support network to resist pressure from the companies. The formation of the Water Users Association was the first step toward a broader community mobilization. During the following weeks, the two associations worked together to create an organized front of resistance against the pressures from companies interested in the region's water resources. The community mobilization caught the attention of the local press. A newspaper in Gatlinburg published a story about the rural families' struggle to protect their water resources from predatory commercial exploitation. The report highlighted Rachel's case as a symbol of community resistance. Rachel, did you see the story in the newspaper? Asked Mrs. Margaret during a phone conversation. You've become a symbol of the fight for water in the region. I did see it, Margaret. I'm glad our cause is gaining visibility, but I'm also worried if this will bring more pressure from the companies, replied Rachel. Rachel's concern proved justified. After the story was published, representatives from a fifth company appeared at the property with an even more aggressive approach. This time, they claimed to have information about environmental irregularities on the property that could result in heavy fines if not corrected quickly. Mrs. Rachel, our studies have identified that the use of the spring may be violating specific environmental regulations, said the lead representative, a short, stout man dressed in a grey suit. What regulations? She asked, already suspicious of the new intimidation tactic. There are rules regarding the use of water resources on private properties that require specific licensing. Without these licenses, you could be subject to fines of up to $10,000, explained the second representative, trying to frighten her with specific figures. Robert, who was following the conversation, immediately questioned the validity of the claims. Which agency would be responsible for these licenses, and why hasn't any environmental inspector come to notify us of these alleged irregularities? He asked directly. The representatives hesitated before answering, revealing that their allegations had no solid basis. Sir, inspections are conducted based on reports and specific schedules. Our company offers environmental compliance services that can resolve these issues before they become official problems, said the first representative, avoiding a direct answer to Robert's questions. Rachel realized this was yet another attempt to create insecurity through false allegations about supposed irregularities. Gentlemen, I need to consult my environmental attorney before considering any compliance service, she said, using the same strategy that had worked with other intimidating approaches. Mrs. Rachel, environmental compliance is most effective when done preventively. Waiting for official inspections could result in fines that could have been avoided, insisted the second representative. My niece will take whatever measures she deems appropriate to keep her property in compliance with all applicable legislation, declared Robert, signaling that the conversation was over. After the representatives left, Rachel called attorney Stephen, who confirmed her suspicions about the falseness of the environmental allegations. Stephen, they claimed I could be fined $10,000 for using my own spring without a specific license. Is that true? She asked. Rachel, rural landowners have the right to domestic use of water that springs naturally on their land. You do not need a specific license for the use you are making, clarified the attorney. And what if someone reports me, alleging improper use? Any report would be investigated by the competent authorities, but based on what you've told me about your water use, there is no irregularity whatsoever, reassured attorney Stephen. Can they make false reports to create problems? They can, but false reports constitute a crime, and the reporters can be held legally responsible, explained the attorney. The conversation reassured Rachel about the environmental issues, but also alerted her to the possibility of companies using false reports as a new pressure tactic. She decided to carefully document all her activities related to the use of the spring to have evidence of environmental compliance if needed. The children continued to adapt well to life in the treehouse, but Emma began asking more specific questions about the conflicts she observed among the adults. Mum, why are there so many people wanting to talk to you about our water? Asked Emma during a walk to the spring. Sweetheart, our water is very special, and some people want to use it for their businesses. But I want it to remain ours and our neighbors, explained Rachel, adapting the explanation for a child's understanding. Will our water stay ours? Insisted Emma, showing anxiety about the possibility of losing something she considered part of her home. Yes, it will, my love. Mom is working with many people to make sure our water stays with us forever, promised Rachel, speaking more to convince herself than to reassure her daughter. The promise she made to her daughter strengthened her determination to resist all pressures, regardless of how creative or intimidating the tactics employed by the companies were. The treehouse had become the symbol of her resistance, and the spring represented not just a valuable resource, but her family's independence and security. The situation evolved unexpectedly when engineer Daniel, the technician responsible for the hydrogeological study, brought additional information that completely changed the perspective on the spring's value. Detailed chemical analyses revealed that the water had rare mineralogical properties that made it suitable for medicinal use. Mrs. Rachel, the results of the chemical analyses show that your water contains a unique combination of minerals with proven therapeutic properties, reported engineer Daniel, showing detailed charts of the mineral composition. Therapeutic properties? What does that mean exactly? She asked, intrigued by the discovery. The water contains ideal levels of magnesium, calcium, and other minerals in proportions that are beneficial for treating digestive and joint issues. It's the type of water pharmaceutical companies value highly, explained the technician. The revelation about the water's medicinal properties explained the intense interest from multiple companies. It wasn't just an abundant source of pure water, but a resource with pharmacological potential that could be worth millions of dollars if commercially exploited. Engineer Daniel, does this mean my water is worth much more than what the companies are offering? Asked Rachel, beginning to understand the true scale of what she possessed. Much more. Medicinal waters with this composition can generate annual revenues of hundreds of thousands of dollars when properly exploited, confirmed the technician. And can I exploit these medicinal properties on my own? You can, but it would require obtaining specific licenses for the commercialization of medicinal water. It's a complex process, but technically feasible, explained Engineer Daniel. The discovery of the water's medicinal properties created new possibilities for Rachel, but also heightened her awareness of what was at stake. The companies knew the spring's true value and were trying to acquire it for a fraction of its commercial potential. During the next meeting of the Rural Landowners Association, Rachel shared the discovery about the water's medicinal properties. The revelations sparked intense discussions about strategies to protect and potentially exploit the region's exceptional resources. Everyone, if Rachel's water has medicinal properties, it's possible other springs in the region also have special characteristics, observed Mrs. Margaret. We should run chemical analyses on all our water sources to better understand what we have, suggested Mr. William James. The proposal was unanimously approved. The group decided to expand the technical study to include detailed chemical analyses of all water sources on the associated properties. The additional investment would be significant, but justified by the potential for similar discoveries. The chemical analyses of the other sources revealed that 3 additional properties had waters with interesting mineralogical characteristics, though not as exceptional as Rachel's spring. Mrs. Patricia had a source with high iron content beneficial for treating anemia. Mr. Paul Robert had a spring rich in sulfates with anti-inflammatory properties. Mrs. Dorothy had a source with magnesium in ideal concentrations for cardiovascular issues. Everyone, it seems our region is a true treasure of medicinal waters, commented Engineer Daniel during the presentation of the results. You have a set of water resources that could sustain a complete thermal complex. The idea of a thermal complex intrigued everyone present. Instead of selling individually to external companies, they could collectively develop a health tourism project that utilized all the discovered medicinal properties. Engineer Daniel, would it be feasible to create a community thermal complex using our springs? Asked Mrs. Margaret. Absolutely feasible. With the set of medicinal properties you have, you could create a unique thermal destination in the Smoky Mountains region, confirmed the technician. And would that be more profitable than selling to the companies? Much more profitable in the long term, besides generating local jobs and preserving community control over the resources, explained Engineer Daniel. The proposal to develop a community thermal complex quickly gained strength among the association members. It was an alternative that would allow them to harness the commercial value of the water resources while maintaining local control and benefiting the entire community. Attorney Stephen confirmed the legal feasibility of the project and offered to research government support programs for rural and thermal tourism development. Stephen, are there any funding options available for community tourism projects? Asked Rachel. Yes, there are several funding lines for sustainable tourism and rural development projects. What sets your project apart is that you already have the necessary natural resources and a solid community organization, replied the attorney. How long would it take to implement a project like this? Depending on the complexity, between 2 and 4 years, but already in the first year, you could start with basic structures and gradually expand, explained Attorney Stephen. The prospect of developing their own project instead of simply resisting corporate pressures energized all the association members. It was a shift in posture from defensive to proactive, transforming the protection of resources into an opportunity for sustainable development. Rachel returned to the treehouse that night with a new perspective on the future. The children noticed her change in mood, and Emma commented during dinner, "Mom, you seem different today. Did something good happen?" asked the girl, always observant of adult emotions. "Yes, sweetie. We discovered that our water is even more special than we imagined, and now we're thinking of ways to use it to help many people," explained Rachel, simplifying the discovery of the medicinal properties. "Can our water heal people?" asked Olivia, with childlike wonder. "It can help people feel better, yes, and maybe in the future many people will come here to drink our special water," replied Rachel, planting the seed of the thermal complex idea in the children's minds. The conversation with her daughters made her reflect on how the thermal complex project could affect their lives. The treehouse could become part of an interesting tourism venture, offering visitors a unique lodging experience integrated with nature. The following week, the association received a visit from a thermal tourism consultant, Consultant Charles Henry, recommended by Attorney Stephen. The specialist was impressed with the quality and variety of medicinal waters available in the region. "Everyone, you have the conditions to create one of the most diverse thermal complexes in the United States," declared Consultant Charles Henry after visiting all the properties. "The variety of medicinal properties allows for offering treatments for different health conditions." "Consultant Charles, what would be the necessary investment to get started?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "For a basic first phase, with simple collection structures and therapeutic bathing areas, about $40,000. For a complete complex with lodging and spa, between $200,000 and $400,000, explained the consultant, and the potential revenue. A well-managed complex can generate annual revenue between $100,000 and $200,000, depending on capacity and the quality of services offered, replied Consultant Charles Henry. The numbers presented by the consultant showed that the thermal complex project was not only viable, but also much more profitable than any proposal made by the interested companies. Furthermore, it would maintain community control over the resources and generate local jobs. "Consultant Charles, what would be the implementation timeline?" asked Mr. William James. "First year, environmental licensing and construction of basic structures. Second year, start of operations with essential services. Third year, expansion with lodging and complementary services," detailed the consultant. "And during the first year, while we're building, can the companies keep pressuring?" asked Rachel, worried about protecting the resources during the development period. "The environmental licensing for the thermal complex will create automatic legal protection against conflicting exploitation of the water resources," explained Consultant Charles Henry. The information about legal protection through environmental licensing was crucial for the association's decision. By starting the official development process for the thermal complex, they would create a legal barrier against companies interested in conflicting commercial exploitation. The meeting ended with unanimous approval to start the environmental licensing procedures for the community thermal complex. Rachel was chosen as the project coordinator due to the exceptional nature of her spring and its central location relative to the other properties. "Rachel, do you accept coordinating the thermal complex project?" asked Mrs. Margaret during the vote. "I accept, but on one condition. I want the treehouse to be preserved as part of the project. It could become a unique attraction for visitors," replied Rachel, ensuring her special home would be kept. "Excellent idea. Treehouse lodging would be a unique differentiator in the tourism market," agreed Consultant Charles Henry. The decision to preserve the treehouse as part of the thermal complex project resolved the question of Rachel staying on the land. What had begun as a temporary protective measure had transformed into a permanent lifestyle choice integrated with an innovative community project. News about the thermal complex project reached the companies interested in the region very quickly. Their reaction was immediate and revealing. Instead of giving up, they intensified their approaches even more, now offering amounts far superior to the initial proposals. "Rachel, a man showed up here offering $100,000 for your spring," reported Robert during one of his morning visits. "He said it's a final and urgent offer. $100,000. That's almost double the first proposal," she observed, surprised by the significant increase. "It's a sign they know the spring's real potential and are desperate to get it before the thermal complex project becomes official," analyzed Robert. The escalation of the offered amounts confirmed that the companies knew about the water's medicinal properties and understood they were missing a valuable opportunity to the community project. "Uncle, do you think I should consider the offer? $100,000 would solve all my financial problems," questioned Rachel, testing her own determination. "Rachel, think of your daughters. $100,000 will run out in a few years, but a stake in the Hot Springs complex could secure income for them for the rest of their lives," advised Robert. Her uncle's counsel helped her stay focused on the long term. The Hot Springs complex project offered not only greater income potential, but also the possibility of leaving a sustainable legacy for her daughters. "You're right, Uncle. I'll refuse the offer and keep my commitment to the community project," she decided, feeling stronger with each decision made in favor of the collective strategy. Refusing the $100,000 offer marked a turning point in the relationship between Rachel and the interested companies. From that moment on, the approaches became even more aggressive, including attempts to convince other association members to abandon the community project. Mrs. Patricia was the next to receive a tempting proposal: $40,000 for her iron-rich spring, with the additional promise of a well-paid job for her son at one of the group's companies. "Rachel, they offered Carlos a job at the company. You know how hard it is for him to find work in the region," reported Mrs. Patricia during a phone call, revealing she was considering the proposal. "Patricia, remember that consultant Charles said the Hot Springs complex will generate many local jobs? Carlos could work on our own project," argued Rachel, trying to maintain the group's unity. "Yes, but that's still about 2 years away. The company's offer is to start next week," said Mrs. Patricia, revealing the immediate financial pressure she faced. Mrs. Patricia's situation exemplified the dilemma all families faced: immediate financial needs versus long-term benefits. The companies knew these pressures and strategically exploited them to break the group's unity. Rachel decided to propose a creative solution to help Mrs. Patricia without compromising the collective project. "Patricia, what if we secured a community loan to help with your immediate needs? We could use the expected income from the Hot Springs complex as collateral," she suggested. "Do you think we could get a loan like that? Attorney Stephen can advise us on the possibilities. With the Hot Springs complex project approved by the association and the licensing underway, we might get rural credit to support members," explained Rachel. The community loan proposal proved viable when Attorney Stephen found a specific financing line for developing rural tourism projects. The credit would allow association members to receive immediate financial support while awaiting the implementation of the Hot Springs complex. "Everyone, I managed to locate a rural credit line that offers loans of up to $20,000 for members of approved community tourism projects," announced Attorney Stephen during the next association meeting. "What collateral would be needed?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "The Hot Springs complex project itself serves as collateral, provided the environmental licensing is approved," explained the attorney. "And the interest?" "Subsidized interest of 4% per year, with a 2-year grace period before repayments begin," detailed Attorney Stephen. The financing terms were excellent and solved the issue of immediate financial needs that the companies were exploiting to break the group's unity. Mrs. Patricia decided to apply for the loan and remain in the community project. "Attorney Stephen, how long does it take to get this loan?" asked Mrs. Patricia. "With the association and project documentation in order, about 30 days, replied the attorney, "and if the companies increase their offers during that period. You've already made the strategic decision for the long-term project. Maintaining firmness in this decision is crucial for our collective success," advised Attorney Stephen. Access to rural financing had significantly strengthened the association's position against corporate pressures. The members were no longer vulnerable to financial blackmail and could keep their focus on developing the long-term project. Meanwhile, the environmental licensing process for the thermal complex was progressing positively. Environmental agencies were impressed with the project's sustainable and community-oriented nature, which preserved natural resources while creating opportunities for local economic development. Rachel, the technician from the environmental agency, said our project is a model of sustainable development, reported consultant Charles Henry after an inspection visit. They are willing to expedite the licensing process. "How much time will we save?" she asked. Instead of 8 months, the license should be issued in 4 months, confirmed the consultant. And does this legally protect us from the companies? Yes. Once the license is approved, any conflicting commercial exploitation in the region will be automatically blocked, explained consultant Charles Henry. The acceleration of the environmental licensing created positive expectations among all association members. In just 4 months, they would have definitive legal protection and could begin construction of the thermal complex's first structures. The interested companies realized they were losing the opportunity and made one last coordinated attempt to break the community project. Representatives from 3 different companies appeared on the same day at Rachel's property, each offering even larger sums and creating psychological pressure through artificial urgency. Mrs. Rachel, this is our final offer, $140,000 for the spring. Cash payment, no red tape, said the first representative from a company that had never appeared before. Our company offers $160,000 plus a permanent job for you coordinating the spring exploitation project, counter-offered the second representative, trying to lure with the promise of professional involvement. We offer $200,000 on the condition that you convince the other association members to sell as well, said the third representative, revealing that the real goal was to destroy the community project. The simultaneous offers totaled sums Rachel had never imagined possessing. $200,000 would solve all her family's financial problems for many years and guarantee a college education for all 4 daughters. Gentlemen, I thank you for the offers, but I need time to consider, she replied, buying time while processing the financial temptation she faced. Mrs. Rachel, our offers are valid only for today. They may no longer be available tomorrow, said the first representative, applying the urgency pressure that had worked in other situations. Robert, who was observing the situation with concern, decided to intervene. Gentlemen, my niece will make the decision she considers best for her daughter's future. Excessive pressure is not appropriate for important decisions, he declared, positioning himself beside Rachel. After the representatives left, Rachel was alone with Robert and the children, facing the most difficult decision of the entire situation. $200,000 immediately versus the long-term potential of the community thermal complex. Uncle, $200,000 is a lot of money. Maybe I should accept and secure the girl's future, she confessed, revealing her doubts. Rachel, your mother didn't protect that spring for you to sell it for money, no matter how much money it was, Robert reminded her. She wanted it preserved to benefit the community. But the girls deserve financial security. I'm a single mother, and I'm not sure if the thermal complex will succeed, she argued, expressing her deepest anxieties. The thermal complex will succeed because the whole community is involved, and the girls will have much more than financial security. They'll have pride in being part of something special, Robert convinced her. The conversation with her uncle helped her keep perspective on values that went beyond money. The thermal complex project represented a legacy of sustainable development that would benefit not only her family, but the entire community for generations. Emma, who had overheard part of the conversation, approached Rachel with a question that revealed a surprising understanding of the situation. Mum, if you sell our water, will we still live in the tree? Asked the girl. No, honey. If I sold the water, we'd have to leave here, replied Rachel, realizing her daughter's question touched the heart of the matter. Then don't sell it, Mum. I like living here, and our water is good for everyone, said Emma, with the simple wisdom of children. Her eldest daughter's answer was the definitive argument Rachel needed. The children had found happiness and stability in the treehouse, and the thermal complex project would allow them to maintain that unique lifestyle while contributing to the community's benefit. You're right, honey. We won't sell our water. We'll use it to help many people and keep living in our special home, decided Rachel, feeling at peace with the choice. The final decision to reject the offer of $200,000 strengthened Rachel's determination and served as an inspiring example for the other association members. When the companies discovered that not even such high amounts could break the group's unity, they began reducing their activities in the region. The thermal complex's environmental permit was approved in 3.5 months, creating the definitive legal protection for all water resources involved in the project. From that moment on, any attempt at conflicting commercial exploitation became legally impossible. "Everyone, today is a historic day," announced Attorney Stephen during the celebration meeting for the permit approval. "You've managed not only to protect your natural resources, but also to create the legal foundation for a unique sustainable development project." "Attorney Stephen, when can we start construction?" asked Mrs. Margaret, eager to see the project come to life. "Immediately. The approved permit allows you to begin construction of the first structures," confirmed the attorney. "And the companies that were pressuring us? Legally, they can no longer interfere. The permit creates definitive protection for the community project," explained Attorney Stephen. Construction of the thermal complex's first structures began 2 months after the permit approval. The initial project included a therapeutic bathing area near Rachel's Spring, with rustic structures that preserved the natural character of the environment. During construction, Rachel's Treehouse became a reference point for visitors interested in the project. Tourists and curious people regularly appeared to meet the family living in the tree and learn more about the developing thermal complex. "Mom, why are there so many people wanting to visit our house?" asked Olivia one afternoon when they received their third visit of the day. "Because our house is special, honey. There aren't many tree houses in the world, and people get curious to see it," explained Rachel. "Will they be able to sleep here when the complex is finished?" asked Emma, already thinking of future possibilities. "Maybe, sweetheart." "Let's see how the project develops," replied Rachel, considering for the first time the possibility of turning the treehouse into a unique lodging option. The idea of offering treehouse lodging gained momentum when consultant Charles confirmed it would be an exceptional competitive advantage for the hot springs complex. "Rachel, a treehouse lodging could charge premium rates and attract tourists from across the United States," estimated the consultant. "It's the kind of experience people pay well to have." "But what about my family's privacy if the house becomes a rental?" she asked, worried about the impact on the children's lives. "We can build a second treehouse, exclusively for lodging, keeping your private residence," suggested consultant Charles. The proposal to build a second treehouse solved the privacy issue and created a significant additional income opportunity for Rachel. The centuries-old tree was large enough to support 2 independent structures without compromising its integrity. 6 months after construction began, the first structures of the hot springs complex were ready to receive visitors. The therapeutic baths area was inaugurated with a community celebration that included all the families involved in the project. "Folks, who could have imagined a day would come when our water would be helping people from various places feel better?" said Mrs. Dorothy during the opening ceremony. "And it all started with Rachel's courage to resist the pressures from the companies," added Mrs. Margaret, acknowledging the leadership Rachel had demonstrated throughout the process. The first weeks of the hot springs complex's operation exceeded all expectations. The medicinal properties of the waters attracted visitors from various towns in the region, and reservations for therapeutic baths were practically full on weekends. "Consultant Charles, the demand is much higher than we anticipated," reported Rachel during a meeting to evaluate the initial results. "Perhaps we need to accelerate the construction of the lodging facilities." "That's a good problem to have," laughed the consultant. "I'll draft a plan for accelerated expansion without compromising service quality." The high demand confirmed the wisdom of the decision to develop the hot springs complex instead of selling to the companies. The monthly revenue already exceeded the most optimistic projections for the first year of operation. 1 year after operations began, the hot springs complex had established itself as a recognized destination in the Smoky Mountains region. The second treehouse was completed and opened as luxury lodging, offering visitors a unique experience of sleeping integrated with nature. "Rachel, the treehouse has a 3-month waiting list," reported the employee in charge of reservations. "It's the most sought-after lodging in the entire complex." 3 months, that's incredible," celebrated Rachel, looking out the window of her house at the visitors walking admiringly through the property. "And there's more. We received a proposal from a television program that wants to do a special feature on the family that lives in the treehouse and created the hot springs complex," added the employee. The television feature proposal represented an opportunity for national exposure for the project, but it also worried Rachel about the impact of the publicity on her daughter's privacy. "I'll think about the feature. I need to talk to the girls about how they would feel appearing on television," she decided, prioritizing her daughter's well-being over promotional opportunities. The children were excited about the possibility of appearing on television and told all their school friends about the Treehouse and the hot springs complex. Emma, now 9 years old, had become a little ambassador for the project, explaining to visitors what it was like to live in the tree. "Mum, can I talk on TV about our home?" asked Emma, showing pride in the unique life they led. "Yes, you can, sweetie. But remember that afterwards a lot of people will know about our family," warned Rachel. "It's no problem, Mom. Our life is cool and other people can learn from us," replied Emma, with the natural confidence of children. The TV segment aired during a high-audience Sunday program and generated a surprising response. Hundreds of people called the spa complex interested in meeting the Tree family and experiencing the medicinal waters. "Rachel, after the TV segment we received over 400 calls," reported Mrs. Margaret, who coordinated the complex's reception. "We're going to need to expand our service capacity faster than we planned." 400 calls? That's more than I imagined. Rachel was surprised. "And there are people wanting to come from New York, North Carolina, and even Virginia. Our fame is spreading across the entire United States," added Mrs. Margaret. The project's national success completely validated the decision to resist the company's pressures and develop the community spa complex. What had begun as a matter of family protection had transformed into a nationally recognized, sustainable enterprise. 2 years after the project's start, the spa complex's annual revenue exceeded $400,000, distributed proportionally among all association members according to each property's contribution. Rachel's share represented about 40% of the total due to the exceptional nature of her spring and the unique appeal of the Treehouse lodging. "Rachel, your share this year was $160,000, the project's accountant informed during the annual accountability meeting. "It's more than you would have received if you had sold the spring to any company. And without losing ownership of the water," added Mrs. Margaret. "You made the right decision to bet on the long-term project." The income generated by the spa complex allowed Rachel to offer a quality education for her 4 daughters, including English lessons, music, and other courses that developed their natural talents. Emma demonstrated a special aptitude for communication and tourism. Olivia revealed artistic talent. Noah showed interest in nature and ecology, and Ethan grew up healthy in a unique environment. "Uncle Robert, thank you for forcing me to live in the tree," said Rachel during a conversation on the 3rd anniversary of the move. "If it weren't for your decision, I would never have discovered all this." "Rachel, I was just keeping a promise I made to your mother," revealed Robert, finally sharing the real motivation behind his actions. "Before she passed, she asked me to make sure you discovered the real value of this property and found a way to use it to benefit the community." "Did my mother know about the medicinal properties of the water?" she asked, surprised by the revelation. "She suspected. That's why she created all the legal protections around the spring and the tree. Your mother was a very wise and visionary woman," explained Robert. The revelation about her mother's intentions gave even more meaning to the project's success. Hope Thompson had planned everything decades before, creating the necessary legal protections and trusting that her daughter would find the proper way to honor the family legacy. "Uncle, why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" asked Rachel. "Because you needed to discover for yourself the value of what you had and make your own decisions. If I had told you everything from the start, perhaps you wouldn't have developed the necessary determination to face all the pressures," explained Robert. The wisdom of Robert's strategy became evident. By gradually discovering the importance of the spring and developing her own determination to protect it, Rachel had become a natural leader, capable of managing a complex project and benefiting the entire community. The thermal complex continued to grow and develop, always maintaining the principles of sustainability and community benefit that had motivated its creation. Rachel's Treehouse became a national symbol of life integrated with nature and sustainable development. During the 4th year of the project, representatives from a university in New York, approached the thermal complex, interested in studying the community-based sustainable development model implemented by the association. Ms. Rachel, we would like to document your project as a successful case study in sustainable rural development, said the professor leading the study. It's a model that could be replicated in other regions of the United States. We would be honored to share our experience, replied Rachel, proud to see the project gaining academic recognition. The most interesting part is how you managed to transform external pressure into an opportunity for internal development, observed the professor. It's a very successful example of creative resistance. The academic recognition led to invitations for Rachel to speak about sustainable development at universities and business events. She always brought her daughters along, especially Emma, who showed a natural talent for communication and a growing interest in environmental issues. Mom, when I grow up, I want to work helping other communities create projects like ours, declared Emma during a trip to give a speech in New York. That's beautiful, honey. You could study business with a specialization in sustainable development, suggested Rachel, encouraging her daughter's dreams. And can I keep living in the treehouse? If you want, you can. Our home will always be your home, promised Rachel, assuring that the family tradition in the treehouse could continue if her daughter wished. In the 5th year of the project, the thermal complex received a National Sustainable Tourism Award, recognizing its contribution to regional development and environmental preservation. The award ceremony took place in Washington, D.C., with the participation of government officials and tourism sector representatives. On behalf of our entire association, I accept this award with great pride, said Rachel during her acceptance speech. It represents the success of community unity in defense of natural resources and sustainable development. Mom, you spoke so well, congratulated Emma after the ceremony. Thank you, honey. But remember, this success belongs to the whole community, not just to me, taught Rachel, maintaining the humility and collective spirit that had been fundamental to the project. The national award brought even more visibility to the thermal complex and significantly increased demand from visitors across the country. The project's annual revenue grew to $600,000, allowing for investments in infrastructure expansion and improvement of the services offered. During the 6th year, Rachel made an important decision to create an educational foundation to train young people from the region in sustainable tourism and community development. The initiative would use a portion of the thermal complex's revenue to fund scholarships and vocational courses. Everyone, I propose we create the Mountain Waters Foundation to train young people in sustainable tourism, she presented during the association's annual meeting. Rachel, what a wonderful idea, supported Mrs. Margaret. It's a way to ensure our success benefits future generations. How much would we invest annually in the foundation? Asked Mr. William James. I propose we allocate 10% of the complex's annual revenue to the foundation. That's $60,000 per year, enough to train 30 young people annually, detailed Rachel. The creation of the Educational Foundation was unanimously approved and represented a natural evolution of the community project. Beyond generating income and preserving natural resources, the thermal complex now also contributed to the educational formation of the region's youth. Emma, now 14, was one of the foundation's first students, developing a research project on water resource conservation on rural properties. Her presentation during the school science fair impressed teachers and classmates for its technical depth and environmental awareness. Emma, your project on water conservation is exceptional, praised the science teacher. You should consider studying environmental engineering at university. That's exactly what I'm planning, teacher, replied Emma. I want to specialize to help our community and others protect their natural resources. Emma's interest in environmental engineering deeply pleased Rachel, who saw in her daughter the natural continuation of the preservation and sustainable development values that had motivated the entire project. In the 7th year, the thermal complex expanded its activities to include scientific research on the medicinal properties of mineral waters. The partnership with universities allowed advanced studies that confirmed and detailed the therapeutic benefits of the region's different springs. Rachel, The university studies confirmed that your waters have therapeutic properties comparable to the best thermal stations in Europe, reported engineer Daniel during a presentation of the results. Does that mean we can expand our services even further? She asked. It means you have the potential to become an international reference center in medicinal thermal tourism, confirmed the researcher. The prospect of international recognition motivated the association to invest in infrastructure improvements to meet more demanding quality standards. New spa facilities were built, lodging areas were expanded, and specialized medical care protocols were implemented. During the 8th year, representatives from an international hotel chain made a surprising proposal: a partnership to transform the thermal complex into a luxury tourism destination, maintaining community management but adding international service standards. Mrs. Rachel, our proposal is to invest $400,000 in infrastructure improvements in exchange for 20% of the revenue for 10 years, explained the hotel chain representative. And the community management would be maintained? She asked, concerned with preserving the project's original principles. Fully maintained. Our role would only be to provide international expertise and quality standards without interfering in the management or community values, guaranteed the representative. The proposal generated intense debate within the association. On one hand, it represented an opportunity for significant growth and international recognition. On the other, there were concerns about maintaining the project's authenticity and community values. Everyone I think we should accept, but with clear conditions about preserving our principles, opined Mrs. Margaret during the discussions. I agree, but we need to ensure the local community continues to be the primary beneficiary of the project, added Rachel, and that the Treehouse maintains its special character without being turned into something too commercial, completed Mr. William James. The partnership with the hotel chain was accepted with a detailed contract that preserved all community values and ensured local benefits were maintained. The investment allowed the quality of services to be significantly elevated without compromising the sustainable essence of the project. In the 9th year, the thermal complex received an international certification of excellence in sustainable tourism, becoming a worldwide reference in community development based on natural resources. Delegations from various countries visited the project to study the model and consider its replication. Rachel, we have received a delegation from Costa Rica interested in implementing a similar project in their country, informed the International Relations Coordinator hired by the hotel partnership. How wonderful. It's gratifying to know our model can inspire other places, replied Rachel, proud to see the project gaining international dimension. They want you to go there and present the experience personally. It would be for a week with all expenses paid, added the coordinator. The proposal for an international trip excited Emma, now 17 and fluent in English thanks to courses funded by the thermal complex's revenue. Mum, can I go with you? It would be an incredible experience for my education, asked Emma. Of course you can, sweetheart. It will be very educational for you to learn about other sustainable development projects, agreed Rachel, always encouraging her daughter's education. The trip to Costa Rica was a success and resulted in an international network of community-based sustainable tourism projects. Rachel was invited to join an international advisory board on natural resource-based rural development. During the project's 10th year, Emma entered university to study environmental engineering, but continued living in the Treehouse and working part-time at the thermal complex. Olivia, now 16, developed artistic talent and created a line of handmade products that were sold at the complex. Noah, 14, became an expert in ecological trails and guided visitors through the property's natural areas. Ethan, 10, showed growing interest in technology and sustainability. Mom, we've all found our calling thanks to the thermal complex project, observed Emma during a family conversation. That makes me very happy, girls. You're growing up with solid values and clear purposes, replied Rachel, proud of her daughter's development. And it all started with our move to the tree, added Olivia. Who would have thought living here would be so special? Olivia's reflection on the move to the tree made Rachel remember the entire journey traveled. What had begun as a forced and mysterious situation had transformed into the foundation of a unique and successful life project. "Girls, you know you've always been my main motivation in every decision, right?" said Rachel, moved by her daughter's growth. "We know, Mom. And you've always made the right decisions," replied Emma, hugging her mother affectionately. The thermal complex continued to prosper and develop, always maintaining the principles of sustainability and community benefit that had motivated its creation. The annual revenue had reached $1 million, distributed among all association members and invested in improvements and expansion. Robert, now 62, continued to follow the project's development with pride and satisfaction. His decision to force Rachel's move to the Treehouse had resulted in transformations that exceeded all expectations. "Rachel, your mother would be so proud to see everything you've accomplished," he said during a walk around the property. "Uncle, without your courage to make that difficult decision, none of this would have happened," she thanked him. "You perfectly fulfilled the promise you made to my mother." And the girls grew up in a unique environment, learning values they will carry for a lifetime, observed Robert, watching his granddaughters playing near the spring. The conversation with her uncle reinforced for Rachel the importance of courageous and visionary decisions. The forced move to the Treehouse had seemed like an unfair imposition at first, but it revealed itself to be an extraordinary opportunity for personal and community development. During the 11th year, the thermal complex inaugurated a medicinal waters research center that attracted researchers from various universities across the United States and internationally. Emma, now a graduate in environmental engineering, was hired as the technical coordinator of the center. "Mom, I got my first official job in our own project," celebrated Emma upon receiving the job offer. "I'm so proud, daughter. You'll be able to apply all your technical knowledge to improve our complex even further," congratulated Rachel. "And I can continue living in the Treehouse while I develop my professional career," added Emma, demonstrating how the project allowed for reconciling personal development with family values. The research center brought even more prestige to the thermal complex and resulted in important scientific discoveries about the therapeutic properties of the region's waters. Academic publications confirmed the exceptional nature of the water resources and increased demand from visitors interested in medicinal treatments. In the 12th year, Rachel was invited to write a book about her experience resisting corporate pressures and developing a sustainable community project. The book, From the Tree to the World, a story of resistance and sustainability, became a bestseller in the personal development and sustainability category. "Rachel, your book is inspiring communities across the United States to protect their natural resources," commented the publisher during the launch. "It's very gratifying to know that our experience can help other people find sustainable alternatives," she replied, satisfied with the book's social impact. The revenue from the book's royalties was entirely allocated to the Mountain Waters Foundation, significantly expanding its capacity to train young people in sustainable development. During the 13th year, Olivia inaugurated her sustainable art studio in the thermal complex, creating works using natural materials from the region and offering workshops for visitors. Noah developed an environmental education program that served schools throughout the Smoky Mountains region. Ethan, now 15, created a digital water quality monitoring system using smart sensor technology. "Mom, each of us found a way to contribute to the family project," observed Olivia during a family meeting. "And everyone developed unique talents that benefit both the project and the community," added Noah. "The coolest part is that we can be ourselves and still make a difference in the world," completed Ethan, expressing the satisfaction of growing up in an environment that valued both personal development and social responsibility. The diversification of the children's contributions significantly enriched the thermal complex, offering visitors multifaceted experiences that combined health, art, environmental education, and sustainable technology. In the 14th year, the thermal complex celebrated 15 years of operation with a community party that included the participation of hundreds of people directly or indirectly benefited by the project. Former employees, students graduated from the foundation, researchers, frequent visitors, and the entire local community participated in the celebration. "Everyone, 15 years ago, we began a dream that seemed impossible," Rachel spoke during the party. Today it has become a reality and benefits thousands of people every year. And all because you had the courage to say no to tempting offers and bet on collective development, added Mrs. Margaret, acknowledging Rachel's fundamental leadership. But the success belongs to all of us. Every person who believed in the project and contributed to its development deserves the credit, replied Rachel, maintaining the collective spirit that always characterized her leadership. The 15th anniversary party also marked the announcement that Emma had been accepted into a doctoral program in sustainable development in Europe, with all costs funded by the success of the thermal complex. "Mum, I'm going to study in the United Kingdom to learn the world's best sustainability practices," announced Emma, "but I'll come back to apply everything here in our project." "I'm so proud, daughter. You'll be our international ambassador," celebrated Rachel, moved by her daughter's achievement. "And I promise I'll keep living in the tree when I return," joked Emma, provoking laughter from the whole family. During the following years, the thermal complex continued to develop and innovate, always maintaining its original principles of sustainability and community benefit. Olivia opened a sustainable art gallery that became a national reference. Noah created an environmental education consulting company that served projects across the United States. Ethan developed sustainable technologies that were implemented in various similar projects. Emma returned from the United Kingdom with a doctorate and an international network of contacts that brought even more development opportunities to the thermal complex. She implemented technological and methodological innovations that elevated the project to international standards of excellence. "Mum, what we learned here in our tree is being studied at universities in Europe," reported Emma after her return. "Our model has become a worldwide reference in community sustainable development." The international dimension of the project's recognition filled Rachel with pride and confirmed that the difficult decisions made years ago had resulted in something truly special and lasting. Today, more than 20 years after the forced move to the Treehouse, Rachel looks with satisfaction at the sustainable empire that developed from that seemingly simple decision by her Uncle Robert. The thermal complex serves thousands of annual visitors. The Educational Foundation has already graduated hundreds of young people, and the project has inspired similar initiatives in dozens of other places. "Uncle Robert, will you ever tell me how you knew all this would work out?" she asked during a recent conversation. "Rachel, I didn't know if it would work out," he confessed, smiling. "I just trusted that you would find the right path to honor your mother's legacy. And if I had sold the spring to the companies, then I would have had to find another way to fulfill my promise to your mother," replied Robert, revealing that he had alternative plans if the first strategy failed. The conversation confirmed for Rachel that the project's success depended both on the legal protection created by her mother and on Robert's strategic wisdom and her own determination to resist pressures and bet on collective sustainable development. Rachel's 4 daughters grew up and developed professionally, but all chose to maintain close ties with the family project. Emma became an international authority in community sustainable development. Olivia created an art movement based on sustainability that influences artists across the United States. Noah developed environmental education methodologies that are applied in hundreds of schools. Ethan became a social entrepreneur who develops accessible, sustainable technologies. The Treehouse, where it all began, continued to be Rachel's residence and became an internationally recognized symbol of life integrated with nature. Visitors from all over the world make a point of meeting the family that lives in the tree and created one of the most successful sustainable development projects in the United States. "Mom, do you regret anything about this whole journey?" Olivia asked during a recent family conversation. "I only regret having doubted so much at the beginning," Rachel replied, reflecting on the uncertainties she felt during the early years. "I should have trusted your wisdom and the communities more quickly. But your doubts were important too. They made you make more careful decisions and involve the whole community," observed Emma. Her daughter's reflection helped Rachel understand that even the doubts and difficulties had contributed to the project's success, forcing her to seek collective and sustainable solutions instead of individual shortcuts. The legacy of the move to the Treehouse extended far beyond financial success or public recognition. It created a new way of living in harmony with nature, developing natural resources sustainably, and building collective projects that benefit entire communities for generations. The spring that caused so much pressure and temptation continues to flow crystal clear, now legally protected and benefiting thousands of people through the hot springs complex. The water that could have been exploited by outside companies became a source of health, prosperity, and development for an entire region. Robert, now over 70 years old, often walks through the property observing everything that developed from his brave decision to force Rachel's move to the treehouse. He completely fulfilled the promise made to Hope Thompson and saw the family prosper in a way that surpassed all expectations. "Uncle, thank you for making that difficult decision so many years ago," Rachel thanked him during one of the walks they take together through the property. "Rachel, I only planted the seed. You and the girls made it grow and flourish," Robert replied, contemplating the centuries-old tree that housed the beginning of it all. The tree that once seemed like a forced exile revealed itself as the starting point for an extraordinary life of purpose, sustainability, and personal and community fulfillment. What began as a seemingly unfair order from her uncle turned into the most correct and transformative decision of Rachel's life. Today, when asked about the moment that changed her life, Rachel always answers with a smile. "It was when my uncle sent me to live in the treehouse. At the time, I thought it was crazy, but now I know it was the wisest decision anyone ever made for me." End of story. Now that you know this incredible story of determination, sustainability, and community unity, tell us, what impressed you most about Rachel and her family's journey? Do you believe she made the right choice by resisting the million-dollar offers and betting on the collective project? Leave your opinion in the comments and share how this story inspired you. Don't forget to leave your like to support our channel and subscribe so you don't miss other moving stories like this one. Thank you so much for your company.